So today, if you want to go to the following slide, please, we are going to talk a little bit, it's a short talk about regulatory aspects related to health technology in Spain within the EU framework. This short talk, I will focus first on which is the current EU regulatory framework for advanced therapy medicine products. And then we will focus a little bit on which could be the potential upgrades so that development can be sped up and the approvals of new products can be quicker than they currently are. So I will start, if you, next slide, please, by defining which is the current status of the regulatory framework in the EU for the advanced therapy medicine products. I believe that right now, or as of today, we may all agree that the current regulatory framework is a mature and well-developed system, especially if we compare with the situation we were facing like some 10 years ago, where it was difficult to find regulations and guidelines that could help us on the best, to define the best design for our development. As of today, the regulation covers the most relevant areas of product development and up to marketing authorization. However, having said that, and we will also probably agree that this regulatory framework could be, for some of us, a little bit too complicated. We may also think, or some of us may also think, that it's sometimes difficult to navigate along the bunch of regulation and guidelines that apply to our projects. And we could also question whether this regulatory framework allows us to complete a rapid development of new medicines products, or if this system is somehow stopping us, making things take longer than expected. We could and should question this. And also, we may think or discuss whether this regulatory regulation is specific enough for advanced therapy products. I mean, as you all know, advanced therapy products have their own characteristics, which are different from, let's call, traditional medicinal products. I'm talking about small chemical molecules. And we may have doubts whether this regulation has adequately taken into consideration the specifics of these products. And obviously, we should always think how we could change this regulatory system to make it better. How could it be improved? Next slide, please. So let's first start by knowing which are the main EU regulations applicable to these products. I have only highlighted two European regulations because I think there's no point in having a very long list of regulations. One gets lost, but this would be, for me, the starting point. The first regulation is like the more general regulation applicable to advanced therapy products. And the second one is the one dealing with clinical trials, which is a key piece in the development of a project. So I have highlighted these two. There are others, but this is a starting point. And I don't want to focus a lot on the EU regulation or to discuss the number, the list. I don't think that this is useful for this audience. But if we go to the next slide, please, you can see something which I want to focus on. This is, as you know, the European Medicine Agency, which is behind the regulations and behind the guidelines that we currently have and that guide us on the development, have made, I would say, a very good job trying to help developers of advanced therapy products navigate the most important regulation and answer their questions as along the development of new products. And they have divided, they have performed this exercise, and they have produced what they call flow charts, where you have like in different areas, quality, non-clinical and clinical development. And then the flow chart shows you like a question. Have you performed the safety assessment of your product? Question mark. And then it explains you how it should be done. It's a very short summary, but it can guide you. And then there's a third column where you can find all the regulations, all the guidelines that are applicable to that specific question. And they also have included at the end a checklist for you to know whether you have completed all the expected steps or whether there's something that is still missing in your project. Obviously, this is not perfect because one could argue that there could be additional questions, that there could be other guidelines applicable. Obviously, this is true, but I think that this is a very important exercise that the European agency has completed, and it could be a very useful tool for developers, especially for those who are not very familiar with the EU regulations. So I have included all the links to this flow chart so that you can check them and review them. If you go to the following slide, please. I will also like to talk on how the regulatory stakeholders can help us and how they want to help us, and which are the guidelines, the services they have implemented to help us navigate during the development in line with the regulatory expectations. If we go to a Spanish level, the Spanish Medicine Agency, la Agencia Española del Medicamento y Productos Sanitarios, has established what it's known as the Innovation Office. The official name is Oficina de Apoyo a la Innovación y Conocimiento sobre Medicamentos, which is addressed, specifically addressed to academic groups and independent researchers, academic or hospitals, and research, patient foundations, and other nonprofit organizations. And what can be done through this Innovation Office? It is extremely interesting for early developers or for developers who are in the early stages of their projects to contact this office, because they can guide you and help you define your project from a regulatory point of view. And it's extremely important that you correctly define your project and establish the basis for the next and for the future development steps. Because if you do this wrongly, then it's going to be more complicated in the next steps, and you will be losing time, effort, and money. So I think that this is a very good initiative from the Spanish agency, and this office offers the possibility to have scientific advice meetings, right? Which are a little bit more, let's say, informal than what would be a standard scientific asesoría científica at more advanced stage of development of the project. And they are very helpful. And I would tell you, feel free to go there knowing very little about the regulations, but knowing a lot of your project. They will guide you because they are there to help you. And they understand that you are not a regulatory affairs professional. So they want to help you. And they also can advise you in the design of facilities for the manufacturing of your products and other aspects of GMP, which could also be a problem at this very early stage of development. Again, in this slide, I have included the link to this office innovation office webpage where you can find additional information. If you go to the next slide, thank you. We will see that we have a similar, though wider scenario at the European agency level. EMA has established a bunch of offices, procedures thought to help developers, especially academia, hospitals, early development, to guide them because they somehow recognize, as I said before, that it's not that easy. Although we have a well-defined and mature framework, regulatory framework, it may not be that easy when you start, when you are following your first steps or baby steps in your development programs, to navigate easily through all these regulations and to fully understand. So the European agency has also established what they call the Innovation Task Force, which will be the equivalent of the Innovation Office at the Spanish level, that can help you in a similar way. You can also request meetings, go there freely and ask them without shame and feeling, showing that you know very little on regulatory, but be careful, know a lot of your project, right? This is a message that needs to be kept in mind. They have also established an academic entry point. It's like a mail where you can direct your questions and they tend to answer. Well, I mean, they do answer, right? So you, if in doubt, go and ask for that. They are willing to help us in this because they fully understand that it's complicated, that it can be complicated sometimes at the beginning. The system is not that user-friendly sometimes. And they have also other services like the qualification of novel methodologies. They also have the orphan designation you may have heard of, and being granted the orphan condition can allow you not only some benefits when the product eventually reaches the market, but also during development. It can make things a little bit easier, let's say, and sometimes it can reduce the development requirements. And on the right side of this slide, you can see also other initiatives of the European agency, which apply probably to more advanced stages of development, which has the scientific advice, the protocol assistance for orphan drugs, the PRIME strategy to accelerate and the development of promising new medicines. But again, as you can see, the European Medicine Agency has developed and adopted a bunch of offices, procedures to help developers navigate their system and develop their projects in a way that can, results being good, can lead to marketing authorization. Again, I have included here a link to this webpage at the EMA where you can find additional information on these help tools established by the agency. If we go to the following slide. I have to say that although, as you have seen, there are a lot of procedures and mechanisms and offices willing to help you, apparently developers may not be using them as much as expected, or maybe they are not producing exactly what the agency is expecting. And after checking some publications and listening to some of the IMA presentations, I have somehow summarized which are the recurrent issues, challenges that the European agency is seeing in development projects. From a quality point of view, comparability seems to be still an issue. I'm not fully sure why you know where comparability is, but I will briefly explain. When you are developing an advanced therapy medicinal product, at the beginning, at the early stages, you may be using a manufacturing process which allows you to produce small quantities, and probably the yield that is not an issue because you are not worried about the quantity or the cost. But when you advance in your development, you need, on the one side, you need to scale it up, to scale up the manufacturing process, because you will be needing more and more product for the development. And also you need to make it more cost efficient. And so you need to implement a bunch of changes during development. And this is something normal. This is something expected. However, what are the agencies requesting us? They request us.
Gloria, sorry, I think you have like a couple of minutes because we need to leave like some minutes for questions and answers. But
okay.
It's okay for you?
I will rush.
Sorry for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Nuria. I will rush. So the idea is the agencies ask us to compare the product that was manufactured and used in our development before and after the changes, and show that it's comparable, so that everything can be used to support more advanced stages of development. And apparently, this is still a procedure where developers are getting stuck. And as you can see, I have highlighted a little bit those aspects which seem to be still an issue or a challenging aspect for development, just for a thought. If you go to the next slide. I would like to summarize and talk very briefly on the priority actions. What is in the future? I'm sure that you have heard about the European Biotech Act, which was introduced last December 2025. This is a very important EU initiative, and it goes beyond regulatory, right? And I'm not going to discuss on those points which are not related to regulatory aspects. I will focus on the regulatory aspects of the European Biotech Act, and which are the focus of the Biotech Act from a regulatory point of view: speeding up clinical trials and accelerating approvals for health products. If you go to the next slide. Thank you. The goals from a regulatory point of view of the Biotech are encourage innovation with increased support, one regulatory pathway and regulatory sandboxes, shorten the authorization timelines for multinational clinical trials, and introducing sandboxes to facilitate atypical clinical trials while maintaining security and safety for the patients, right? These are the points that I would say the main regulatory goals of the European Biotech Act. If you go to the next slide. I have included here some comparative data so that we can understand why improvement is needed. Clinical trials authorization, as of today, multinational clinical trials in Europe, their mean approval time, according to EMA data, is 113 days. In the US, the approval time would be 30 days, in the sense that the FDA has 30 days to either keep quiet, say nothing, or send you a clinical hold letter, right? It is not as dramatic as it looks, in the sense that in the US, FDA is really very quick, but then when you go to the ethics committee and the hospital's structure, then it becomes more complicated. So in the end, the process, although it will be quicker in the US, it will not be that quicker as these numbers may show. And another point of comparison, when you want to perform a clinical trial in the EU, you have to submit a clinical trial authorization request by the FETIS portal, EMA portal, and you have to include an IMPD, which is an investigation medicinal product dossier. And it's a document that describes your product from a quality, manufacturing, and non-clinical development and clinical development point of view. And you need to submit one IMPD for each clinical trial that you want to perform. While in the US,
Gloria, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that we need to move forward. No, I don't know how many more you have to share. You have more slides?
I think there's a one
left. 2 slides. Yeah.
2 slides?
Okay. Then it's fine. Okay, sorry for that.
No problem. So as I was saying, in the US, you have an active IND, investigational new drug, and you don't need to resubmit every time that you want to perform. So these are areas where European regulatory system might be improved. If we go to the next slide, I have included here some food for thought, let's call it like this. And this is just how could currently available tools for medicine developers be improved. We have seen that there are a lot of tools, but apparently either they are not good enough, either we don't know how to use it, but maybe we are not achieving the results that we will expect. Then a second question that I think that we could discuss, is there a need to define new, different, and more specific quality, non-clinical and clinical requirements for advanced therapy medicinal products? And how do we assess, what do we think about the Biotech Act? Is it a positive initiative? Is it something too vague? Far too complicated? Fails to include whatever? We could discuss on that. And we could, based on what currently the Biotech Act includes from a regulatory point of view, we could either agree or disagree on the defined focus, which, as I said, are the clinical trials, the speed up approval, and the definition of regulatory sandboxes. So that's the end. Sorry if I was too slow.